So Kylie, if you want to start letting folks in. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to give it just 1 or 2 more minutes as we have some more folks joining, and then we will be able to kick off this great webinar on CMMC compliance. So thank you, and we'll get started in just 1 or 2 more minutes as we have a few more folks coming in. All right, so we're about 3 from the hour here, so we can go ahead and get started. Like I said, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are very excited about our webinar today, Mastering CMMC Compliance, Reduce Risks, and Optimize Costs. We're joined by a great panel that we're very excited to have here with us in Idaho. We have Ken Bible, former CISO, Department of Homeland Security, Srikant Rachakonda, the founder and CEO of SMPL-C, and Tim Fitzpatrick, the founder and VP of Business Development for Asante Cloud. And we're going to run through a great presentation today, just what every small business needs to know about CMMC, doing business with the DoD, and the cybersecurity requirements needed there. So we will keep admitting people as they come in. Please feel free to put any questions you have into the chat, raise your hand. If they apply directly to a slide, I'll flag them and we'll be sure to answer them as it comes in. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A session at the very end for anyone that has any questions for our great panelists here. So with that, I'd love to get it started. So Tim, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Sounds great. Can we advance to the next slide, please? No. Kick it off. All right. So again, my name is Tim Fitzpatrick. Nice to meet everyone. Located here in Idaho, actually at 16th and Idaho, right downtown. And I'll be moderating today and hopefully helping everyone understand CMMC a little bit better when we're done. It can be complicated. We want to keep this informal, but hopefully when we're done, we'll better understand what CMMC is, because it is complicated, how it applies to your company and your subcontracts. One thing that's come up often is, well, what level of CMMC compliance do I need to adhere to? So that's something we will cover. Timelines, best practices, procedures, and how to achieve your compliance as cost effectively as possible. So that's our goals for today. We'll keep it pretty informal and look forward to lots of questions at the end if you'd like to get really specific. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so CMMC has a couple different parts to it. It is a DoD program. I'll tell you one thing that I'm seeing in the industry is the Department of Defense needed to secure the supply chain, right? That's one of the originations for why we're here today. But I will say that we're seeing CMMC being having influences, if you want to call it that, beyond just the Department of Defense, right? It's rolling down to subcontracts. It's even rolling into other areas of the government. We're hearing cyber insurance companies talking about CMMC being a good standard to be looking at. So I know right now, things have are moving pretty quickly. And the first thing was the 32 CFR rule, right? So the 32 CFR rule establishes a framework that sets up the assessment and the compliance requirements. Now, what is key about that is it was published, and I think the correct term is it became law on December 16th. So that means that it's effective on December 16th, and assessments, I believe, start on January 2nd of 2025. So we move into the second phase of this is 48 CFR rule, which is the acquisition rule. So this is pending, and that means that it'll make compliance a requirement and into contracts and a real test of your cybersecurity measures. And it's estimated to start around June of 2025. So that's kind of an overview about the mandate, where we are now on today, and we'll kind of proceed on to the next slide and um, get a better feel for it. So at this point, I'm going to pass off a lot of the heavy lifting here to Sri and to Ken. But Ken, I know we talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Consequences of non-compliance is important. So
Well, actually, I'd like to maybe back up one slide and thank you first for Apex for having us on today, and for everybody who's come on board for this webinar, because I think it's a really powerful uh, discussion to be having. And as Tim points out, the mandate now is is with the Department of Defense and contracts and contractors for the Department of Defense. But I wanted to kind of talk about these pieces a bit, right? So in any kind of federal or I think any policy making, you have the program establishment. So that's the 34 CFR rule. And then you have the standard that has to be met, which in this case is the NIST 800-171. Right now, Rev 2, but Rev 3 is out. So they're going to have to go back through rulemaking to update it, but they'll have interim rules in the intermediary. And then the third piece of it, getting any kind of public policy out there, is the actual maturity. How do I measure myself? And that's what the 48 CFR does, is say, what does level one mean? What does level two mean? And how do they apply? So it's really these three parts of putting together any kind of a federal program. And this just lays out the two pieces that are specific to CMMC. But importantly, the cybersecurity standards in NIST 800-171 have been around for decades, right? And they've been required in contracts, in federal contracts, through most of that period. I know that at my time at DHS, they were implemented through the Homeland Security Acquisition Regulations. And if you really look back into every DoD contract going back for however many years, you'll see that the DFARS clause and that were requiring the compliance with NIST cybersecurity instructions were there. And what generated this interest in CMMC was the fact that we had a lot of controlled but unclassified information, CUI is the acronym, that was ending up in the hands of our adversaries. And when it was investigated, it was found that that was due to the lapse or the non-implementation of these basic cybersecurity controls that are in the NIST standard. So that I was actually in the Pentagon early on in the discussion about CMMC, and it was a very robust conversation because there was not an appetite, particularly from a Department of Defense standpoint, there was not an appetite for having this intellectual property that was generated at the cost of the government, which means at the cost of your tax dollars, ending up in the hands of an adversary who could then replicate whatever technology that the U.S. was trying to put forward to advance its goals worldwide. So this is really an offshoot and a consequence of our inability to assess that we actually were meeting these NIST standards for cybersecurity. And so DoD simply came out and said, okay, well, we're actually going to inspect what we expect, right? We're going to have the third party assessment, and that's the creation of the whole accreditation board and the whole levels within CMMC. So just to kind of scene set, the requirements that we're talking about haven't changed. The NIST standard has always been there. What we're doing in CMMC, or what DoD is doing in CMMC, is verifying that you actually are doing it. And there's consequences for not doing it, because if you do not get the appropriate level assessment, whether it's self-attestation or self-assessment at level one or the first stage of level two, or have the certification for the level two third-party assessment, you won't be eligible to get a DoD contract.
Yeah.
And the requirement flows down from the prime down through the subs. So it isn't sufficient to simply say, well, I'm the subcontractor, that's the responsibility of the prime. It flows down to you as a sub. So that's really my scene setter here, is that we're not talking about a new cybersecurity requirement. We're talking about a new way of measuring your maturity and implementing that cybersecurity requirement. So Katie, let's go forward to the next slide because I think that it's not just DoD that's looking at the implementation of these security standards in NIST 800-171. I was doing it when I was over at DHS. We had implemented a program called our Cyber Hygiene Program
Mhm.
because I was concerned that requiring the third-party assessment piece of the CMMC program was going to be too burdensome on small business. And
Mhm.
our acquisition and procurement offices actually had a focus on building the small business engagement with the department as primes, not as a sub, but as primes. And so it became very important to me to figure out how did I encourage them to take on board these requirements seriously and get to a point where they could meet our standards without necessarily requiring all that DoD was doing. But there's other things that have happened even in the interim.
Yeah.
So people may remember back in 2021, actually it was 2020, but crossing over into 2021, the impact of the solar winds incident, which was not only across the federal government but in private industry as well, and it caused a tremendous amount of concern about the disclosure of information about publicly traded companies and their cybersecurity posture, and a lot of angst from the Securities and Exchange Commission over that publicly traded company and what did its officers and directors know in advance of that breach. So much so that the SEC went after the board members and the CISO of SolarWinds. So this had consequences outside of just a DoD thing. It was if I'm asserting that I'm meeting these requirements and I'm substantively not meeting those requirements, and it has an impact on the assumptions that my investors make, then it can have implications with the SEC.
Yep.
The other piece that's also in play now is SolarWinds and several other incidents kind of raised the bar with the Department of Justice. And so they have a program they've started to apply what's termed the False Claims Act to cyber. And it was really interesting this morning. Someone did me the favor of lead turning on my need for references. But I was just looking at the list of the False Claims Acts being used for cyber non-compliance. And it's everything from Centin, Health Net Federal Systems getting a $11.5 million settlement to Pennsylvania State University having a $1.25 million settlement, all the way down to uh, the Comprehensive Health Services, CHS, in March of 2022, having almost $1 million settlement. So this is the Department of Justice getting into the act and saying that, hey, if you have a staff member who knows you're not complying with these basic standards that you're signing up for in your contract with the federal government, then you can put yourself at risk of prosecution by the Department of Justice. So those incidents, SolarWinds, the Colonial Pipeline incident, and a whole string of other incidents that have occurred have kind of galvanized the federal government at looking at this. And from the current administration, we've already seen the Department of Justice and certainly with Katie Arrington, who was one of the basic architects in CMMC, back into the Pentagon for DoD and
Mhm.
Department of Justice talking about how it considers that the risks to U.S. interests by foreign powers is still something they want to go pursue in terms of cyber. There's a lot of issues associated with signing up for a federal contract and not meeting these basic cybersecurity requirements. So that's a long-winded discussion on this slide, simply to say that you can lose revenue, you can lose your contract, you can have the issues. If you had a data breach, you may find it difficult or impossible to get cyber insurance. And just fundamentally, we're talking about the intellectual property that's been paid for by the taxpayers of the U.S. that we have a duty to protect, whether you're in the government or whether you're an industry partner under contract with the government. So just really kind of scene setting why this type of program is important, not to look at it as something that's added on top of what you already have on your plates, but looking at it from the why is it important? It's important because the data you handle is sensitive and it would have value to an adversary, and you are signing up in the contract to protect that data. And so CMMC is the Department of Defense way of verifying that you actually are postured to do that. So I'll leave it there and jump back over. Srikant, you might have some other things to throw in on that.
Yeah, I mean, you've I think that's a home run in what you did. So I appreciate that. But we can go to the next slide because I think you covered a lot, but I wanted to give them the context of just build on top of what Ken just said. And fundamentally, first, I also want to thank Idaho Apex for setting this up and everybody who involved in this. But believe it or not, CMMC 2.0 is a lot simpler than the first version that came out. So there is some, feedback that DoD has actually incorporated back into this and made it, a lot more, I would say, streamlined. But essentially, it was the 1.0 had like 5 different levels, and you had to kind of grow in that levels and things like that. Now they've made it a little bit more clear and very, very true to form, right? What they mean is the level 1 is basic. Everybody should be doing this. It's actually part of the FAR clause that's out there, and it's 15 basic safeguarding requirements, and that's all that is. Like everybody should be doing this, and if you're not, then I say do that, right? Like you got to say this is actually for your benefit. You're safeguarding your data. You're safeguarding what you are setting out to do, because once this breach, and I always say this to a lot of folks, is like the fact that you're not breached yet is because people don't know to find you. That's all. Like it's a matter of time thing, right? So unless you're proactive about these things, you will fall victim to these things, and obviously nobody wants to have this, especially with the type of data that you're handling, right? The second set is this advanced, where you're handling the CUI data that Ken talked about, right? There is a huge leap from the foundational to the advanced, right? It's actually 110 requirements and about 320 objectives, and they all are part of that Rev 2 this 800-171 framework. When they move to Rev 3, it's supposed to be a lot more streamlined, but the way any rulemaking takes, you can probably expect that to happen maybe like in a few years, 2 to 3 years. So for all practical purposes, what they have currently has to be implemented, right? And then there is a level 3, which is again probably super primes kind of thing, which is not common for a lot of us in this forum right now. But essentially, it's a very high priority CUI programs that, in fact, need DIBCAC to be sitting with you to do and get certified. So for all practical purposes, it's either level 1 or level 2 that we will be thinking about. Now, there's some really very thought-provoking stats that are out there that actually kind of put emphasis on why this is pretty important, right? Level 2 typically is going to take you between 9 to 18 months to actually complete, because there's a lot of activity that you need to do. And part of the thing that DoD wants companies to embrace is everybody's behind the fact that we need to safeguard the data. Nobody says, oh, I don't want to, right? Like we want to. But what DoD is saying is, how do you incorporate this mindset where your business operations are actually being part and parcel of safeguarding the data on an ongoing basis. That's the part that is the continuous monitoring aspect, or the proactiveness of compliance that the program is geared towards putting. It's not just a moment in time, it's how do you maintain it over time. That's kind of why it takes a lot longer. And also, There are about 300,000 companies, and 75% are supposed to be small businesses. So that's a lot of weight that small businesses have to take on to make this program successful, and also to secure the DIB in general, right? And it's a no. I put like 10%, but it's actually probably 3 to 4% that's actually ready to pass the certification without remediation, because nobody is ready, right, kind of thing. So it's how strategic and how well you plan is going to help you make sure that you get certified, but also get certified in a way that is cost effective, and also thoughtful in how you do it. So that's the part that we will talk about more in the next upcoming slides. We can move to the next one, Kylie. Yeah, so we did talk a little bit about this. Why is the CMMC program even come about, right? Versus why didn't they just say, hey, just do NIST 800-171, right? Because NIST by itself is not a model that actually validates whether you've done it. It's a very self-attestation model. It talks about best practices, right? So NIST always puts out guidelines, and the guidelines are supposed to be incorporated by the company or wanting to implement these at their own pace, right? So there's no formal validation. It's an all or nothing approach, in the sense that you go through this and end to end, and there's really no way to kind of stop in between. But with CMMC, DoD has said, hey, we need to formalize this. Like, and to Ken's earlier point, is it's not just about asking the companies to implement something. It's verifying that they have implemented, and putting a monetary benefit to it for actually implementing it, and certifying yourself. That's the part that they have implemented, and there's like third-party assessments that are part of this, and of course they implemented the tiered approach, so that you can actually start at level one and then grow yourself as well, because the contract values significantly increase when you have level 2 certified. Ken, anything to add here?
Well, I guess so. So again, going back to what you said about NIST, I mean, they are not in the business of assessing anyone. They wouldn't even do anything with a self-attestation,
Yeah.
right? It's simply the standard. So they put out the framework of controls and the best practices that should be followed. And then it's up to others to figure out how they want to implement those controls. And that can be through CMMC for the federal government agencies. It's through FISMA. But I guess to this audience, what I think would be important is the fact that if you're going to implement a cybersecurity program, then it's important, actually, I would say it's imperative to have some framework by which you are building that program and deciding what areas are you going to focus on. And NIST, in the case of working for the federal government or for DoD in particular, is just probably the gold standard to focus in on implementing would be NIST 800-171. There are other standards out there, ISO, CIS, other standards that are out there that you could go by, and that could be a really robust conversation about where that goes over time. But for working with the federal government, and specifically working with the DoD, the NIST 800-171 is where they're headed, and actually where they've been, and where they're trying to go validate. So that would be my only, maybe tweak on that, is that NIST never intended to go measure you. They're simply putting out the standards and the best practices, and then it was up to others to decide how to measure maturity towards that standard.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. All right, we can move to the next slide. So the process itself is, it is, I would say, it is robust, in the sense that you've got to first discover, you got to find all the gaps, you got to build a program, I would say, of how you want to implement it, and then actually figure out, if you're working with your internal IT team or with your MSP or whoever who is handling the technical portion of it. Work with them on the implementation plan. Then you got to report it, which is basically the audit prep exercise. Are your policies and procedures in order? Do you have the right evidence that can help support that you implemented the policies in the right way? Do you have final shared SSP report that you can share with your C3PAO so that they can understand what you did and certify you, right? And then post the audit, like how do you maintain it so that you stay compliant quarter over quarter? Because the other thing that DoD has implemented is this is a 3-year certification, especially if it's level 2. But every year you have to update fresh evidence, and as you and I know, business doesn't stand still; things move, right? So as things move and change every quarter, every year, how do you still stay compliant and demonstrate that you're compliant? And the only way to do that is through the evidence that you're collecting and making it as robust as possible. So every piece of this is there's documentation involved. There are multiple people that can help in the journey. There could be internal people, there could be external consultants. The problem with the external consultant model is that they they're like I mentioned, there are about 300,000 of them, but there are only about I think about 2,000 to 3,000 people so far that are certified to be CMMC consultants. So if you do the math, you're in the line to get somebody to do it for you. So it's much better if you figure out a way to um, do I wouldn't say do it yourself all the way, but leverage people that can come with a combined solution that take you through all of these phases much more effectively, and that becomes a way to simplify your journey as well, like a thoughtful strategy and a practical implementation and another practical way of maintaining it over time. So that's the journey that everybody has to take. Tim, do you have anything to add here? I know you guys have been talking to a few folks.
Yeah, the only point I'd like to make is limitations on the C3 PAOs. There's some really
Yeah,
great ones that are out there, but Sri, if you could talk to that a little bit, I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but
yeah, yeah.
ones that we're working on are already taking reservations for next year, right?
Yes, yes. So why is that, right? Like, so there are only about from the last count, I think there are about 65 of them in the nation, right? Well, and these are organizations that basically their designation is a CCA, and the CCA is only the one person that or can certify you, right? And every audit now requires, I think, three CCAs. So that's there's a death of people, and there's overkill of people during the audit. So how do so why is that why is not everybody wanting to be a CCA? Well, because they have to certify you, which means they take on the risk of saying, yeah, these guys are have done what they're supposed to do. So you're as a company, they're actually evaluating you and certifying you, which means tomorrow if something happens negative, then they are on the hook to say, hey, you're the ones who certified to us. Now you have sort of a way out. So that's kind of why these C3PAOs are very cautious. They live by the letter of the law. They're actually asking, show me what we have done for this objective, and and everybody's is learning as they're going, right? So a lot of subjectivity is coming into the picture as well. So the more we as a company we plan and we determine the right course of action that is relevant for our company, and put that story in front of the auditor, the better it is for that, right? So you have to be practical about these things. That's the part that the CTPA is also kind of pushing back on things for that reason as well. Like if it's not perfect, they're not going to certify you. But as we know, there's nothing called perfect. Is it perfect for our current use case? And are you able to justify how you've implemented the controls? That becomes the key.
Well, and Sri, I think importantly, there's in this fix piece, and I'm glad you mentioned the maintain piece, but particularly in the fix piece, I mean, there is no you can't just turn to your supplier or your cloud provider or whatever and say, well, that's your problem,
Yeah,
right? Because if something bad happens, I mean, part of this is about internally. How does the company communicate internally? How does it make decisions if an event does occur? So I
yep,
go back to the not solar winds, back to the Colonial Pipeline incident, and the facts on the ground are that that intrusion never got to the actual industrial control systems, the operational technology of the pipeline. But because the risk, they couldn't assess where the risk ended, they shut down that
down.
industrial control
Yeah,
system, right? And so,
right.
that was a decision. It was a business decision to protect the rest of their infrastructure. So it's
Yeah,
really important for companies to think about this, not through the lens of, hey, can I outsource the responsibility? The
yeah,
responsibility can never be outsourced. It's your company. It's
yeah,
your business at stake. So really thinking about it through the lens of building good partnerships where you understand those relationships, who's doing what to who, and understanding how you would respond as an entity to some sort of a breach. Because I don't think it should become a finger pointing game either.
yeah,
As somebody said before, there's companies that have been breached, and then there's companies that don't know that they've been breached, right? Or will be breached. And so this isn't a function of pointing fingers. Implementing every control in that NIST has available would not necessarily guarantee that you would never be breached, but it's reducing the risk and it's managing the risk. And so I like to look at even what we're talking about with CMMC. You have a standard, you have a maturity level that you're trying to go reach. It helps you think through, what does your cybersecurity program need to look like? What are the pieces? Who's responsible for what? How would you communicate in the event of some sort of incident?
yeah,
So I think it's just good business. It's the realities. It's almost table stakes of doing business in the digital age.
yeah.
And
And
I'd like to add to that real quick. We have a client here in Idaho who took that same position. It's like, we have a contract we think may be coming down in about a year. However, we see this as an opportunity to enhance our cybersecurity posture overall, regardless of how CMMC affects, a contract that we would like to win or we think is coming down the pipe. This is going to help our company be better prepared across the ecosystem for their cybersecurity posture, and they're going through CMMC level 2 to improve their company's posture.
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And to DoD's credit, they're not going to be punitive, right? If there's an incident, if the incident response plan is actually tailored to bubble that up so that others will protect themselves from it, right? And you actually are now, in a better position, and you're actually affecting everybody positively. Where if because a lot of times the tendency is to sweep the incident under the rug, right? Which is not the ideal way of handling that, right? Like it, and that's actually a really a great credit to DoD for actually saying, hey, it's not going to be punitive to you, but there should be a way to bubble these incidents up so that the rest of the DIB can benefit and secure themselves immediately. Right. Let's move to the next, and this is kind of where SMPL-C and Asante Cloud, kind of work well together and basically simplify the CMMC journey for the folks, without trying to make it a very marketing oriented. All I'll say is SMPL-C is a workflow optimizer platform that helps, and it's a collaborative, cloud platform that helps the the consultant, the remediation partner, and the DIB contractor work seamlessly together, and they're basically can accelerate the program much more effectively. So you're not learning how to do it, you're actually doing it. And our goal is to move the thought process from hey, figuring out what to do to actually securing yourself through the CMMC journey. That's our main part of this. And Asante Cloud, a great partner for us. Tim, you want to give a couple of lines on yourself as well?
Yeah, so Asante Cloud is a registered practitioner with the DoD. So we're certified to be able to come in and help you determine where your gaps lie. And one of the companies that I mentioned before, they're looking at going out and acquiring a bunch of software. Well, the point being, let's find out where you are first, right? Let's understand where the scope is. Let's use a great tool like SMPL-C to document where you are against all the different controls. And then it makes it so much easier when the auditor, the C3PAO, does come in and actually do the audit. One thing I'd like to bring up as well is the fact that there are a number of companies out there that will operate both as a pre-audit consulting organization, or as an RPO, or as a C3PAO, the actual auditor. Well, they cannot be doing one and the same, right? So if you are engaged, we love to engage a C3PAO, an actual auditing firm, when we come in and do our gap assessments. But that precludes them from doing anything on the audit downstream. So just be aware of that. And once we do come up with a gas assessment and we take a look at where the gaps are in your scope, then we can look at a remediation solution. So what do you need? Do you have multi-factor authentication? Have you done physical, security assessments on locks or cameras? Have you, do you have, certain cybersecurity tools in place that will make sure that you're going to pass your audit when it does happen? And that's called a remediation plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we come back again and ensure that you are ready for audit, right? In terms of how complete and robust are your policies and procedures, how defensible is your evidence against those policies, and then of course we work with work to refine those things so that you don't want to go to an, and this is fundamentally how I think as well. It's like, if I want to write exam to get certified, I want to damn well make sure that I will pass the exam. So I don't want to go to an exam hoping that I'll get passed, right? So we want to ensure that you're ready, and we give you all the necessary guidance to prepare you for that audit as well. And once that audit is done, how do we continue maintaining that? That's the year-over-year thing that we can we'll help you as well.
There was a question in the chat that you might want to speak to. I think that the partial answer is already there, but what is the cost to get CMMC Level 1 certified for a small business less than 3 people? And I guess number one is the point of certification. There isn't a certification, it's a self-attestation, and then putting the results of that attestation up on the SPRS, the DoD's website. But you might have I mean, I know that from in my own mindset, having a tool to kind of guide you through and help you make those decisions and put the documentation together gets to be kind of important. If your vision is beyond, say, where you're at level 1, but you really want to continue to move into the higher levels that require a formal C3PAO. Or, as we've talked about before, and I like to hammer home, is I just want to go build a cybersecurity program that protects me and protects the data of my customers.
Yeah, and I think that's the planning process. There are tools out there that make it that they are free, but what we provide is the most cost-effective way to remediate those gaps. Like that's the part that you don't want to do trial and error and take much longer. You want to be very decisive about how you want to approach this and implement a solution that can be, that can sustain time as well. All right. Yeah. So, Tim, this is probably more for you. So this is essentially like how do you even determine what level you are? I know, Tim, you guys provide free service to determine based on their contract. So if you want to talk a little bit of what you guys can help them.
Yeah, that's fine. We can't get it all done right now. This is a good flow chart, but if you have any questions, at the end of this, you'll have my contact information. We're very happy to come in and do a free assessment of some of the contracts that you do have. I think Ken mentioned this earlier. A lot of the primes that are out there are just blanket requiring the flow down on their contracts, right? So when we looked at some of the contracts in places like Boeing and Lockheed, they have 20,000 subcontractors, so they're not going to make it too hard on themselves. They're just going to flat out do a flow down that's going to make it work. So if you do have a contract, we can come in and take a look at it, whether it includes, as you see, the FARS 52-204-21, right? So that's where we'll kind of start. And I believe, Matt, we also have a symposium. Is it May the 20th?
The 13th, Tim.
Well, but the 13th.
13th.
Yeah. So we will have a booth at the symposium as well if you'd like to bring your contracts with you, and we'd be happy to do review from there. But yeah, it's a fairly simple flow chart. And I don't know if there's any other input that Sri or Kim would like to have on this page.
No, your contracting officers should be also helping you, but unfortunately there are a few of them. So it's hard to get a handle on them as well. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it'll be great to it's a great service to actually go through the contract and determine that. And these flowcharts do help, but it's always it's an eye chart here for sure. So
right. But your very important point. If you do have a contracting officer with your prime, please contact them, right? That is the most important thing that you can do. You don't want to guess on this. We'll help you out as much as we can, but we're still going to request that you contract your contracting officer with your prime because it's really important.
Yeah, yep. Tim, Sri, I'm sorry. We have a quick question in the chat that kind of goes back to the Boeing example here. Do we have to have the CMMC completed to build for companies like L3 or Lockheed, or is it only needed for direct government contracts? So kind of going back to the subcontractor piece.
Reed, do you want to take that one? I can. It's basically a subcontract flow down. So
yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. So if you are a subcontractor and the prime has those requirements, you are going to be required to attest to those levels. And Lockheed is going to be one of them. Again, take a look at the specific, what you're building. There are situations too where are you building an off-the-shelf product, right? Is it something that is commercially available in a catalog and it's not specialized? It depends. But I would say based on what I see here, that would be a flow down as a subcontractor, and you will be required to become CMMC certified.
Yep. All right, we can go to the next slide because so this is a very quick slide. So there is a pretty similar analogy between the tax industry and CMMC right now. When tax software came into existence, like there are multiple people that help, but the tax software are obviously sped up the way the preparation for an audit took place. So similarly, we are trying to with SMPL-C and other software that's out there, we're trying to optimize the process so that the consultant, the MSP, the defense contractor can leverage all the NIST knowledge without having to learn everything, and retain it, kind of thing. And it's basically like everything is available on their fingertips that they can actually leverage. So that's kind of this basically talks about. We can move to the next one. So we do have a couple of level 1 and level 2 checklists, kind of thing. A lot of this will be available for you when, as outputs from this webinar. But essentially, how do you, and there's a lot of talk in the chat about level 1. It is still on you to conduct your own gap assessment and fix the gaps and collect the evidence and submit to the SPRS PIEE system, and then maintain it over time. So it does take a lot of effort, and without it being a distraction, the way to manage this is to have it organized in such a way that you can easily update the evidence on a periodic basis, so that one, you make sure you're compliant, and two, you're able to demonstrate in case somebody comes to you and asks for evidence. Your everything is ready for you to kind of showcase, if you will. So that's the level 1 checklist, and there's a similar one for level 2, but just probably a lot more robust, if you will. Yeah, Kylie can go to the next one as well. Yeah, so it has a similar thought process as to how you can do it, but the amount of time it takes to obviously do 15 versus 110 regulations, the scale of operations is pretty high. And one major thing to identify here is that for level 2, you need to really know what CUI you're actually handling, and there is different categorizations of that. That's out there, and of course, Asante and SMPL-C as an offering, we actually help determine that as well, so that that kind of also determines. Actually, if you want to move to the next slide, Kylie. So even within level 2, there is self attestation and a certificate. Self-attestation, it's supposed to be like a very sliver of things. So it again depends on some of the categorizations of CUI. So you need to be really aware of all of that, and then make sure that nothing has changed over time as well, because the flip from a self-assessment to a certification is razor thin. So it's probably better to think in terms of, hey, let's get certified even if you're not needed, because you need the thoroughness of it, so that when somebody comes to you, and DoD might do this with a spot check kind of thing, and you have to determine that you are level 2 certified, and prove it on an ongoing basis. Anything else to add on this, Ken or Tim?
No, I maybe just in terms of refreshing the audience on what CUI actually is, right? So, pre-Obama administration, there was kind of an alphabet soup of acronyms for information that was below the level of being classified, but had special handling or was controlled for distribution. So these things, everything from the not releasable to foreign nationals, or no foreign information, if you're familiar with the nuclear programs, to for official use only, which was pretty ubiquitous across the Department of Defense, to law enforcement sensitive. So if you're doing work with Naval Criminal Investigation Service or one of the other law enforcement or law related organizations within the Department of Defense, you were dealing with law enforcement sensitive information. So this is kind of the CUI came about through an executive order from President Obama that lumped all this information into this category of controlled but unclassified information. So that's what we're really talking about here, and it's a pretty wide-ranging swath of information. And the National Archives was tasked with kind of organizing what would actually qualify as the CUI registry of types of information that were controlled. So that goes to the right side of this chart for the CMMC level 2. And then the material that would be less than that, that's outside of the National Archives registry, would be in that self-assessment either at level 1 or level 2.
Yep. Yep.
Hey, I have a question I'd like to bring up that a number of clients have asked us is the current administration's position on CMMC. I know that, you know, things are changing. It's a lot of changes are going on, but is this really going to be affecting CMMC with the current administration going forward? Any changes that might happen?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say that by the very fact that Katie Arrington, who was kind of a driving force over at the Office of Secretary of Defense Acquisition and Sustainment when CMMC was born, and then was brought over by John Sherman under the CIO shop. Well, Katie is now performing the duties of the DoD CIO. I'm not sure if that's the last move on the chessboard, but the fact that she's there, and this was like a major point in her work at ANS, leads me to believe that there is a continued focus on letting this program play out. I think the other piece that reinforces is just, as I mentioned before, from the Justice Department and even from the administration itself, a recognition that our adversaries, in particular in the Asia Pacific region, continue to take advantage of weak cybersecurity in the U.S. You know, we're seeing a whole string of things, even continuing with the Volt Typhoon and Silk Typhoon incidents with our telecommunications industries and with other critical infrastructure. So the threat is not going away, right? And so risk is a function of, are there vulnerabilities to be exploited? And two, is there somebody trying to exploit them? And the answer to those two questions is yes. So I would say the risk is still pretty high. So given those dynamics and that basic equation, I would say yes, the administration is still interested in CMMC.
Yep. Right. In a basic summary, yeah. So there are industry resources that are out there. RPOs are the consultants, if you will. There is software that's out there, and there's obviously remedial solutions, MSPs, enclaves. You'll hear a lot of it, and then and of course with the process and being so robust and the timeline being so expensive and the costs, like we talked about this in passing, but I wanted to save it for here. And these are estimates coming from DoD. It's not coming from us. These are actual numbers that DoD has published. Because they're recognizing that companies need to first understand where they are and then try to fix those, and that takes time and effort and cost, and all of that is put into a model that they have, and that's the numbers that they're coming. And these are, by industry standards, also it's conservative. So there are, like, if you have multiple manufacturing sites, then it's exponentially higher, kind of thing. So all of it, what we want to kind of say is, it's not just doom and gloom. Like, a lot of it can be really circumvented, like just like anything else, by really good planning and really good execution of the plan, right? So that's kind of where Asante Cloud and SMPL-C are partnering up, because we also realize that we can't, and nobody can do this alone, and there's no point in selling pieces of the puzzle. We want to come to the defense contractor with a end-to-end solution that actually is easy to actually follow through and implement and simplify the journey, so that you're learning as you're implementing as well. Because ultimately, to Ken's point, it's your company. You own the data, and it's you are on the hook for making sure that the data is safeguarded, right? That's the part. But how you do it can be very well managed through uh, you know uh, whether you want to do external consultants, internal hires, automation of documentation, or keeping it yourself. There's a lot of things we hear in the industry where people try, fail, repeat, and then come back, and then we want to remove that kind of trial and error. We want to give you a much more happy path, if you will. But that's basically where we are. So anyway, any other questions that are out there that we can help answer?
I'd like to make one more point on just the industry resources. There's been a kind of a real upswing in products and services that are available in the market. Just a little bit buyer beware. The great products out there, there's fantastic products like SMPL-C, but there are also products that will solve one piece of the equation, right? They're not going to give you complete CMMC compliance. So, do your homework on some of the industry resources that are out there because it's a definite mixed bag for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say maybe maybe riffing a little bit off of that and expanding is really understanding what what type of resources you need for the work you're planning to do. So going back to Ms. Drake's question about not having an in-house IT department and the like, if what you use in terms of IT is email and maybe some file sharing. That you need much less to get that level one and to be able to check the box. That might be just a really sound relationship with a cloud service provider, with a managed service provider to provide those services for your company. I would still say you need to have somebody who's part of your organization that's cognizant of the status of that and is looking at the risk reports and such that are coming from that service provider to make sure you're not seeing something that you don't like. On the counter side, and there's a lot of businesses like this that develop software, let's say. Now the situation is much more complex because I'm not only securing basic business communications, but now I have to secure a development environment. And so I have more of those controls I need to be thinking about. And so it may not be sufficient to simply rely on the controls that a cloud service provider is providing for me. Now I may have to have more cognizance of my development practices. Yeah, do I offshore? Do I have people in other countries that are doing software development coming into my environment? If I do, how do I manage that insider threat risk to my organization? How do I control their access? So just thinking about what type of work are you trying to do? What's the nature of the work being done in the contract? And what are those resources that you need to properly secure that? As I said before, this is now becoming table stakes for doing business. I would say business, period, not just for the federal government, but being able to secure your digital environment appropriate to the business that you're trying to do is really table stakes at this point.
Yeah, and right on dot. So, Kim, you
Yeah.
wanna wrap it up,
Well,
or Matt?
great. Thank you, everyone. Any last minute questions before we jump off here?
No, Matt, I wanted to just talk about the symposium on the 13th. If you could tell us a little bit more about that
Yeah, yeah.
before we all go.
Yeah, for everyone that's on the call here, we will be having our Idaho Small Business Contracting Symposium here at Boise State on Tuesday, May 13th. It's registered where we'll be having speakers from different agencies, state, local, federal. We'll be doing a panel on CMMC compliance. If everyone, like Tim says, wants to bring contracts, we can help review them and see what level of CMMC compliance is needed based on the language of the contracts. And then, yeah, a lot of other educational opportunities, a lot of chances to network with agencies and, procurement providers and everything like that. So that is Tuesday, May 13th, and it'll be here at Boise State University. So,
Awesome.
Great. We will be there.
well, great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to our esteemed panel for jumping on here. This was really helpful and really informative. We will share everyone's contact information if there's any follow-up contact questions that anyone has, and we have some more resources coming out around checklists and roadmaps and things like that. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to Tim, Ken, and Shreed for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.